Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be exploring a book with a title that might raise a few
All
eyebrows,
right.
Extended Massive
I
Orgasm
like
by
that.
Steve Bodansky. But trust me, this book is about way more than just,
Right.
it actually dives deep into some fascinating ideas about pleasure and
I know.
communication and control that
Interesting.
apply to all aspects of life.
Yeah, that's right. Whether or not you're interested in achieving the, titular experience,
Yeah.
the book offers a unique perspective on how to achieve greater satisfaction and fulfillment
Mm-hmm.
in any area of your life.
I like that. Okay, so let's unpack that. One of the core concepts Bodansky introduces
All right.
is this idea of agreement, and he describes it as this harmony
Uh-huh.
between what you desire and what you actually experience.
Hmm.
And it got me thinking, how often do we actually stop and ask ourselves, what do I truly want?
It's a powerful question,
Yeah.
and one that many of us rarely take the time to answer honestly. Bodansky argues that this lack of awareness is often the root of our dissatisfaction.
Yeah.
We go through the motions, settling for mediocrity,
Right.
because we haven't clearly defined what would truly bring us pleasure.
So it's not just about knowing what you want, but
Mhm.
also recognizing when your experiences are not aligning with those desires.
Exactly. And that's where the concept of agreement comes in.
Okay.
It's about actively seeking out experiences that resonate with your true self.
Mm-hmm.
Bodansky applies this concept to sexuality, but it's easy to see how it could be relevant to our careers,
Sure.
relationships, hobbies, any area of life where
Yeah.
we seek fulfillment.
That makes a lot of sense. I know I've definitely stayed in situations that
Hmm.
weren't serving me, whether it was a job I hated or a friendship that had run its course.
Right.
And maybe it's because I wasn't being honest with myself about what I truly wanted out of those experiences.
That's a common trap we fall into.
Yeah.
We tell ourselves we should be happy with what we have, or we're afraid of the unknown, so we stay stuck in a state of disagreement with our own lives.
Okay, so let's say we've taken some time to reflect and we have a better understanding of our desires.
Okay.
What's the next step in achieving this agreement that Bodansky talks about?
Well, this is where things get a little more, shall I say, controversial.
Uh-oh.
Bodansky introduces the concept of surrender and control,
Okay.
which might sound a bit paradoxical.
Yeah.
He suggests that reaching a state of intense pleasure in any area of life
Mm-hmm.
involves both surrendering control of your nervous system
Okay.
and having someone or something else take control.
That's interesting. I'm imagining this as letting go of like our own anxieties and inhibitions
Right.
while also trusting something outside of ourselves to guide us towards pleasure.
Yeah.
But honestly, the idea of being a pleasure victim, as he calls it, feels a bit jarring at first.
I understand your hesitation.
Yeah.
It's important to clarify that Bodansky isn't talking about actual victimhood
Okay.
in a negative sense.
Right.
He's using the term metaphorically to describe a state of conscious surrender.
I see.
It's about choosing to relinquish control and fully receive pleasure
Mm-hmm.
without resistance.
So it's about consciously choosing to trust the process and let go of the need to micromanage every aspect of our experience.
Precisely.
Okay.
And Bodansky argues that this dynamic of surrender and control
Yeah.
is essential for experiencing intense pleasure,
Mm-hmm.
both physically and emotionally.
Interesting.
He even connects this to the interplay of tension and relaxation that's necessary for both men and women to achieve deep satisfaction.
Okay. I'm starting to see how this idea of surrendering control could apply to more than just physical intimacy.
Mm-hmm.
It makes me think about creative endeavors, for example.
Right.
Sometimes the best ideas come when we let go of our preconceived notions
Yeah.
and allow ourselves to be guided by intuition or inspiration.
Exactly. It's about finding that delicate balance between effort and surrender,
Yeah.
between consciously pursuing our desires
No.
and allowing ourselves to be receptive to what unfolds.
Yeah.
And it's not always easy to find that balance, especially in a society that often values control and self-reliance above all else.
So, how do we learn to surrender more effectively? What are some practical steps we can take to loosen our grip and allow ourselves to fully experience pleasure in all its forms?
Well, that's a question we'll explore further in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay.
But first, let's talk about the role of communication in achieving agreement.
Right, I'm all ears.
Welcome back to our deep dive into extended massive orgasm. We've been talking about the idea of agreement, that alignment between our
Yeah.
desires and our experiences, and how surrendering control
Right.
can actually lead to greater pleasure and fulfillment.
And it's been fascinating so far.
Oh, good.
But you mentioned that communication also plays a crucial role in all of this. I'm
Yes,
curious to hear more about how that fits into Bodansky's framework.
absolutely. Bodansky dedicates a significant portion of his book to emphasizing the importance of clear, honest communication, particularly in the context of intimate relationships.
Mhm.
He argues that many of us struggle to articulate our desires,
Yeah.
even to ourselves, let alone to our partners.
That resonates with me. It's like there's this unspoken pressure to just, know what a partner wants
Right.
or to be able to anticipate their needs
Yeah,
without having to explicitly communicate them.
exactly. And that can lead to a lot of frustration and disappointment.
For sure.
Bodansky challenges this notion,
Okay.
suggesting that open and honest communication is essential for creating a truly fulfilling sexual experience.
Okay.
He even goes as far as to say, and I'm quoting here,
Okay.
we are so conditioned to avoid talking about sex and to avoid talking during sex
Wow.
that most people at first must make a deliberate effort to communicate while getting down.
That's a pretty bold statement. I mean, it's one thing to talk about your preferences in general,
Sure.
but to actually communicate during intimate moments, that feels a bit, well, vulnerable, maybe even awkward.
Vulnerability is key here.
All right.
Bodansky suggests that many of us hold back from expressing our desires because we fear judgment or rejection.
Right.
We might worry about appearing selfish or inexperienced,
Sure.
or we might have internalized societal messages about what's appropriate to want or enjoy.
It's like we have all these unspoken rules and expectations around sex that can make it difficult to truly relax and be ourselves.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And that's why Bodansky encourages us to challenge those rules and create a space
Okay.
where we can freely express our needs and desires without shame or guilt.
Yeah.
He believes that this kind of open communication is not only essential for sexual satisfaction, but it can also lead to deeper intimacy and connection with our partners.
That makes sense. After all, how can we truly connect with someone if we're not being honest about who we are and what we want?
Exactly.
Hmm.
And this principle of open communication extends beyond the bedroom.
Okay.
Bodansky argues that we can apply these same principles to other areas of our lives,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's negotiating a raise at work or setting boundaries with friends and family.
So it's about learning to advocate for ourselves and express our needs in a clear and assertive way, regardless of the context.
Absolutely. And it's not just about speaking up. It's also about being a good listener
Okay.
and creating a space where our partners feel safe to express themselves as well.
I'm realizing that true communication is a two-way street.
Yes.
It's about creating a dynamic where both parties feel heard,
Yeah.
understood, and respected. It seems that Bodansky believes this kind of reciprocal communication is the foundation for achieving that agreement we've been talking about.
You've hit the nail on the head.
Yay!
He suggests that when we can communicate openly and honestly,
Right.
we create the conditions for greater intimacy,
Okay.
pleasure, and fulfillment,
Mhm.
not just in our romantic relationships, but in all areas of life.
This is all so fascinating, but I have to admit, I'm still a little stuck on the idea of surrendering control,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to something as personal and intimate as sexuality.
I know.
I can see how it might work in theory, but in practice, it feels a bit intimidating.
I understand your apprehension. It can be challenging to let go of our need to be in control,
Right.
particularly in situations where we feel vulnerable.
Exactly. But Bodansky seems to argue that this vulnerability is actually the key to unlocking deeper levels of pleasure and satisfaction.
He does.
Mm-hmm.
And he provides some practical guidance on how to cultivate this sense of surrender,
Yeah, okay.
both physically and emotionally.
Mm.
One technique he highlights is something he calls the push-out method.
Okay. I'm intrigued. What is the push-out method, and how does it relate to this idea of surrender?
Essentially, the push-out method, also known as reverse Kegel, is a technique for consciously relaxing the pelvic floor muscles.
Interesting.
Bodansky suggests that this can enhance pleasure for both men and women by reducing tension
Okay.
and increasing blood flow.
So it's not about trying to force anything or exert control, but rather about letting go and allowing sensations to flow more freely.
Exactly. And this ties back to the concept of surrender. It's about trusting your body's natural responses and allowing yourself to fully receive pleasure without resistance.
Right.
Bodansky believes that by practicing this technique, we can begin to retrain our bodies and minds
Mm-hmm.
to embrace surrender as a pathway to deeper satisfaction.
That's really interesting. I'm starting to see how something as simple as consciously relaxing certain muscles can actually be a gateway
Right.
to a more profound shift in our relationship to pleasure and control.
It's amazing how interconnected our physical, emotional, and mental states are, isn't it?
Absolutely. And it seems like Bodansky is encouraging us to explore those connections and
Sure.
challenge our preconceived notions about what it means to experience pleasure.
He is. And while his book primarily focuses on sexual pleasure, the principles he outlines have much broader applications.
Okay.
He argues that by cultivating a sense of agreement, embracing communication, and learning to surrender control, we can unlock greater fulfillment in all areas of our lives.
So, dear listener, as we move into the final part of our deep dive, we invite you to consider how these concepts might apply to your own experiences.
Yeah.
Where in your life are you holding back from expressing your desires?
Right.
What areas could benefit from more open and honest communication? And how might you practice surrendering control in order to create more space for pleasure and fulfillment?
Welcome back to the Deep Dive.
We've been unpacking some pretty thought-provoking concepts from extended massive orgasm,
Yeah.
exploring how these ideas about agreement, communication, and surrender can actually apply to all areas of our lives, not just the bedroom.
It's amazing how a book with such a, should we say, attention-grabbing title
Right.
can offer such profound insights into the human experience. Bodansky really challenges us to rethink our relationship
Yeah.
to pleasure and to consider how we might be limiting ourselves.
Yeah, totally. As we've been discussing, it seems like a lot of us are walking around in a constant state of disagreement, not fully aligned with our own desires or settling for experiences that don't truly bring us joy.
It's a subtle but pervasive form of self-sabotage.
Yeah.
We might tell ourselves that we're content with the status quo, but deep down, we yearn for something more. And Bodansky suggests that this disconnect stems from a fear
Right.
of fully embracing our own desires.
It's like we're afraid to admit what we truly want, even to ourselves,
I like it.
because we're worried about what it might mean or what others might think. But as we've been exploring,
Yeah.
Bodansky encourages us to shed those fears and to cultivate a more conscious and intentional relationship with pleasure.
He does. And he argues that this shift in perspective can have a profound impact on our overall well-being. When we're in a state of agreement with our lives,
Right.
when our experiences align with our desires, we naturally feel more energized,
Yeah.
fulfilled, and connected to the world around us.
It's like all cylinders are firing, right? We're operating at our full potential
Exactly.
because we're not wasting energy trying to suppress or deny our true selves.
And that's why Bodansky's work is so relevant, even beyond the specific context of sexuality.
Yeah.
He's offering us a roadmap for living a more authentic
Yeah.
and fulfilling life, a life that's aligned with our values and desires.
So, dear listener, as we wrap up this deep dive into extended massive orgasm,
Okay.
we invite you to reflect on how these ideas might resonate with your own experience.
Okay.
What areas of your life could benefit from more agreement? Where might you be holding back from expressing your desires or surrendering to the flow of life?
Remember, the pursuit of pleasure is not selfish or indulgent. It's an essential part of being human.
Right.
By embracing our desires and seeking out experiences that bring us joy,
Right.
we cultivate a deeper sense of connection with ourselves and with the world around us.
It's about living a life that feels good on every level.
Yeah,
Physically, emotionally, mentally,
absolutely.
even spiritually.
Exactly. And while Bodansky offers specific techniques for enhancing sexual pleasure, his overarching message is one of empowerment and self-discovery. He encourages us to become more curious about our own desires, more courageous in expressing them, and more open to the myriad ways in which pleasure can manifest in our lives.
It's about reclaiming our right to experience joy, to embrace our sensuality, and to live a life that truly reflects who we are at our core.
Beautifully said. And who knows, maybe along the way we'll even discover the power of an extended massive orgasm.
That's definitely something to ponder. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and remember, the journey to greater pleasure and fulfillment starts with a single step. So go out there and explore, experiment, and above all, enjoy the ride.